Counselor Long?
Here.
Counselor Combs?
Here.
Counselor Bliss?
Here.
Counselor Hires?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, so we'll now move on to public comments. Comments will be accepted from the general public concerning topics that are not included in the meeting's agenda. Individuals will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time, and the cumulative totals of all comments from the public shall not exceed 15 minutes. Preference will be given to Tahlequah citizens in compliance with Oklahoma Open Meetings Act. No action or discussion is permitted by the City Council on any issue or topic raised by a speaker during the public comment period. Would anybody like to comment? All right, seeing none, we'll go to item number 4, discussion of possible action to hire a patrolman in the police department. I don't believe Ms. Petty is with us, so she can...
No, sir, I'll be filling in. It's my recommendation that we hire Michael Cates as a patrolman in the police department at a patrolman 3. He is certified and experienced, which is why the patrolman 3 instead of patrolman 1.
You ready for a happy motion?
A happy motion will be
I'll
great.
happily make the motion that we hire Mr. Cates at level 3.
So motion by Councilor Long, second by Councilor Combs. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Counselor Long?
Yes.
Counselor Combs?
Yes.
Counselor Bliss?
Yes.
Counselor Hires?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Councilor Hires, and other council members.
Welcome to team. Thank you for being here. All right, item number 5, discussion possible action to hire a laborer operator in the street department.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. My recommendation is to hire William Ketcher, Ketcher, as a labor operator in the street department.
Mr. Ketcher.
I'll happily make a motion that we hire Mr. Ketcher.
Councilor Long's made a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Councilor Combs. We have any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Counselor Combs?
Yes.
Counselor Bliss?
Yes.
Counselor Long?
Yes.
Counselor Hires?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Congratulations. Welcome aboard, Mr. Ketcher. All right, discussion, or agenda item number 6 is discussion of possible action to adopt ordinance number 1254, 2018, amending an ordinance related to the prohibition of smoking in indoor public places and workplaces, providing definitions, establishing signage requirements, and providing for enforcement and penalties. Mr. Johnson.
Good evening, council. I apologize for missing the last meeting. This is the second reading of this ordinance, and I was out of town. And the city attorney brought it to my attention that at the last meeting, in your council packet, it comes in as black and white. And so you guys couldn't actually track the changes that were made to the ordinance. It just all looked the same. And then in this one, I think it's the same way, right? Is what you got. You can't even see the highlights, but you can see what has been
We can see the line.
striked out. Okay. So what I just gave you is the highlights are new language, or the red. Treat the highlights in the red as the same. And then the strikeouts are what the highlights in the red are replacing.
What's the blue?
They're just links.
Yeah, it turns it into a link.
If you have them on a computer, you can click on it.
It's actually the section of the code in our ordinance where all those little blue numbers are. And the second page I gave you was the state statute, Title 21, which is the purpose of this exercise. So what we're doing is we're updating our ordinance to better reflect the state statute that prohibits tobacco products. There's something that we've already taken a step further on our city ordinance than the state statute, and that's the vaping products. And so that's something that the state hasn't tackled quite as well as we have. And in this new language, we're making it even more clear what we're trying to accomplish. And take your time and look through it. I apologize that you didn't get a colored copy. We still work with some antiquated equipment. I know you guys are trying to rid us of some of our old equipment, and that's one last remaining dinosaur is the copier that gets used to provide the packets.
I had someone ask me a question about, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I had someone ask me a question to make sure we were working from the most current
Yeah.
thing. Did you also get that question directed to you as well?
No,
Because they said the last time this was brought up, I guess when vaping became an issue, and then they looked at that old document and looked at this, and they thought there was some changes. They just wanted me to clarify that we're working from the most current.
well, so as far as vaping goes,
Okay.
we're kind of writing the manual on that. The state hasn't addressed vaping unless it's prohibition of minors' access to vaping. And that's really the only spots that they address it in the code. So we're kind of writing the law for vaping prohibition. We hope that the state follows our lead, or we just do it on a local level throughout the state. The genesis of this is the Tobacco Settlement Endowment Trust. One of the things that Oklahoma's definitely gotten right. And they fund what is known as the Healthy Living Program. And their representatives are with us today. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with them. They work closely with us in the community. And they've helped drive this and motivate me to get this in front of you guys.
Any other questions, Mr. Johnson?
Just one to legality, and you've heard me say this before. I don't have an issue with the ordinance, but are we setting a precedent by passing things that we hadn't really seen prior to? I mean, is that a good practice? Is that, like I said, I don't have an issue with the ordinance, but last meeting we didn't have an ordinance except on the agenda item.
Well, we actually had it, it just wasn't clear what changes were made.
Well, no, yeah, this one, but we had another ordinance that wasn't provided except as the number in the agenda item.
Oh, you're talking about
the one prior to that. So, I mean, I don't want to be setting a precedent that we'll pass
Are you talking about the last
whatever's handed to us
meeting?
the day of the meeting.
You're talking about the last meeting?
As far as
Yeah,
this
the one
agenda
prior to
item,
that, yeah.
as far as this agenda item, I don't think we're setting any kind of precedent. But I get what you're getting, you're mentioning, and we can tell you about that later.
Practice.
It's word for word the same language as what was in that first reading.
I understand, and
I think you're
looking
talking
at
about
what
one of the
was on Sterling Codifiers, I could kind of decipher, okay, what the red language was.
I got you. Thanks for taking the time to do that.
But still, you get the people that, well, that's not anything like it. And so the miscommunication is what's kind of frustrating.
Dang black and white copy.
And it was in color. We didn't get it in color. We just got it in the PDF form, so the packet wasn't in color, but the attachment that we got was.
You had
To be clear,
separate
to be
from
clear, so
the
the
packet.
image of the last attachment for this week was in black and white because it was just a copy over from, but the original was, I believe, in color, is what you're saying.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Can I have Clint read this email real quick? Is that allowed?
Out loud, or
Is it a test?
No, I just want him to look at it and make
I mean,
sure.
if he wants you to,
Okay. You can just read that, please.
I don't know that you can command him.
Well, I'm just, sorry, I'm not commanding you, Clint, I'm asking you nicely.
Does the king want to transfer 25 million to his account?
Yes, and it's the best location to order drugs in Canada.
That's what I started. That was my starting point.
Okay.
What is in Sterling Codifiers?
Okay.
And this is even from Sterling Codifiers.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I had answered that correctly. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
All right, any other further questions for Mr. Johnson? Is anybody out in the audience staring back at us, have any questions? All right, if there aren't any further questions, then we're in line for a motion. Does anybody have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Motion by Counselor Liz, second by Counselor Long. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Counselor Bliss?
Yes.
Counselor Long?
Yes.
Counselor Combs?
Yes.
Counselor Hires?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Council.
All right, moving on to item number 7 is presentation and discussion regarding a proposed tax incentive program for the recruitment of new substantial hotels in the city of Tahlequah. Mayor Nichols couldn't be with us tonight. We have Mr. Patel here. If you want to address.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Councilor Howard. Councilors, we came to this community about 5 years ago bought the lot next to Reese's and built an 80-room Holiday Inn Express hotel. We serve on any night anywhere from 50 to 80 people coming in from out of town, and we are their home away from home. We represent our community, and we think we do a fairly good job of serving them, showing them the hospitality of this town, and we would like to grow that hospitality with a proposal for a second hotel here in town. We have worked with the Cherokee Nation to hold basically a spot for us on their Cherokee Plaza development for a 90-room, anywhere from 90 to 96 room, True by Hilton. We did some economics on this project, and when we dug into the numbers, we realized that we're going to need some help. Today, construction costs have gone up dramatically from the time we built our first hotel in this community. And what we're proposing, I believe I've talked to you all individually, what we're proposing is what we're calling it a substantial tax. Basically, any hotel with 80 rooms or more in this community, and that would only currently be our hotel, the Holiday Inn Express, and then the new one. And basically having a 5% additional hotel motel tax, and those taxes that are collected rebated back to us either on a quarterly basis or an annual basis, which I think I've given you guys the pamphlet for that. Does everybody have that? I've got some.
Should be in our packet.
And we were hoping that you guys would consider this to get this project going. We feel strongly that without this incentive, it would be hard to get this project off the ground. The numbers would be difficult. Banks want to look at to make sure that the numbers work. We want to make sure that it works. And we come to you guys to ask for your help to see if we can implement the special tax. It would only affect our hotels. It wouldn't affect any other hotel in this community. And it would be paid by no citizens unless they stay at our hotels. And it primarily would be guests from out of town coming in. So I would be glad to answer any questions you guys have.
Okay, before we start in the question, so just for clarification on what's happening tonight. Tonight is just discussion and the presentation by Mr. Patel. Any action that happens won't come from the council in the form of raising the hotel motel tax, but rather come before the council to take it to a vote of the people. And so that's kind of where this discussion will center around. Eventually will be, does the council want to vote to take the hotel motel tax to a vote of the people? And then ultimately the residents of Tahlequah will be the ones who decide on if the proposal as presented can go through or not. So does anybody have any questions for Mr. Patel?
I have one, and I knew I would. Okay, so why I don't think the market warrants a third major hotel at this time, say 5 years down the road, a developer comes in and wants to build a 81-room facility, is this 5% going to be applied to that hotel, and will that be paid to you, sir? That's my only question. It'll be paid to them.
I would think not, because that's not what we're asking for. We can clear that up in the language, but I believe.
Ultimately, I'm sorry.
Well, go ahead.
Just from what I was reading here. So yeah,
anybody can be funded into that pool that's 8 and above in that time frame. The way that they're discussing the language. Obviously, the devil's in the details of the language, which we haven't seen yet. But I wouldn't let you guys even take a vote on something that excludes other hotels, only his hotels that get a benefit of. I don't think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
So.
And just for ultimate clarification, Mr. Patel is not proposing the language that would go on the ballot that we would pass. He's just made the proposal that then would get the conversation started. So this isn't actually what potentially could be voted on in the future.
But I think the concept would be that 80 and above rooms would fund the source of, and then later the city would administratively give back to those that apply for it that meet that criteria. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
No question.
Make sure we weren't
And you know I
restricted.
have to at least one question.
Subsidize the one.
Councilor Long?
It mentions, and I met with Pete, and I've already asked a lot of my questions. 96%, of course, would go back to him, and then we could keep as a city, what's being proposed currently is 4%. But then we have the contract with the chamber.
Right.
That money is to go back to the chamber, and I know I happen to be with 3 chamber board members and a PRISM council member as well.
Well,
So
ultimately,
how
I
would
mean,
this,
it would go back into the hotel motel tax. And then the
Right.
hotel motel tax, the city has contracted, if you will, with the chamber to be the conduit of how that hotel motel tax is spent. So any uptake in the hotel motel tax, the 96% that would happen here would go, I mean, it would be part of that contract. Ultimately, decided by
This 5%.
Unless, there was language in the new ballot. I mean, of course, there could be new language in the ballot. Ultimately, that will be up to us to decide what that language will be for the residents to vote on. So, I mean, if it just gets passed through how it is now, then it would be the hotel motel tax that goes to the chamber unless there's a change in the
so
ballot.
we have to change the contract
Same
with the
thing.
chamber as well?
We don't have to change the contract with the
This
chamber.
is a 5% on top
Could, if we
of
wanted.
the
It would
current
just be,
hotel
yeah.
motel tax. This is a 5% only for, I can't remember the language you guys use, but 80-plus room hotels. And so that chamber, or I'll call it chamber, that hotel motel tourism tax, that piece is in effect today. No matter how many hotels are out there, 80-plus rooms or below 80 rooms are still affected by that tax, but this one is only 8-plus rooms.
Right,
This proposal.
right.
And Mr. Patel's proposal is simply 5% on top of what we currently have
Like a luxury tax.
at this time. And so, but if the proposal comes out, if we put it to the vote of the people, if we decided to put to a vote of the people to up the hotel motel tax, the base rate, and then add the 5%, or up the base rate but only add a 3% for, the over 80, that ultimately would then come back to us to decide how the language would appear on the ballot that the residents would then get to vote on. Does that make sense?
I think that
Councilor Long, the 4% that would be generated on the existing hotel and the new hotel would still go to the chamber as is. It's the additional 5% on top of the 4%.
Right.
Any other questions? Mr. Bernard?
Councilor Long stole my question.
Mr. Soto?
There's been a lot of conversation in the community about raising our hotel motel tax, but just for the entire base, going from 4 to maybe 7%, and this is a good discussion to have, but if you write the language in such a way where all we're doing is raising the overall tax rate for all hotel, motel, and allow those funds to go where they go today, you build up that base of monies, and then the council can determine how to spend those funds. If he needs funding, then you guys, not having your hands tied, saying 95% goes to him, he needs a certain dollar amount, then you as the city council can determine to give it or not to give it. It seems to me that if we promise 5% just for this, I think the people would, at least this person, think would be better if we raise the tax across the board, have those extra funding that allows us to fund other projects, tourism, whatever, streets and so forth, rather than just tying it to one specific entity or group, which in my terms seems like more like crony capitalism. I think it would be fairer to raise I think it would be a good thing to raise hotel motel tax, but how you spend it, I think you should keep it much more general.
Sure, and those are discussions that we can have, and this is obviously the beginning of that discussion. And what we have tonight is Mr. Patel has come to us with his recommendation, and then it would be ultimately up to the council and, you know, how we decide to actually move forward, if we decide to move forward with a hotel motel.
Comment? All right. And that's a good point. The way I see this structured, this wouldn't affect the existing hotel tax. If it was to be raised, it could still be raised underneath and not affect this. This is totally on top. So if in the future the idea was to raise the existing 4% to 6%, that can still be done under the wing. Just pushes him up on top a little bit higher. So
and depending on how the
that can be
language
done.
is
It's
written,
independent.
it could be an opt-in. You know, Mr. Patel could choose to opt in with his 2 hotels for 12 years. I mean, his proposal sunsets at 12 years, so he could choose to opt in for 12 years or 6, you know, depending on how the language is written. But then if somebody else, Mr. Soto, wants to get in the hotel business and decides to build a 91-room hotel, he could opt out of it. And he could do, you know, so a lot of it comes to how the proposal is written, and then, of course, ultimately it goes to what the residents of Tahlequah wish to vote and how they wish to vote on that proposal. So.
And if I understand his proposal correctly, just to clarify with the citizens and the council, you know, it would be actually, it might be an incentive for advertisement's sake, for the current hotels that are under 80 rooms to say, hey, we're cheaper here because we don't have this additional tax. So they can advertise a cheaper rate, so to speak, and
they would be 4%. And
exactly.
The other hotels would
so
be
that's another thing too. You're talking about across the board. Those other hotels would be pulled in, competing against a branded hotel, and that might be difficult for them. So just something to think about.
Ms. Dyson, you have a question?
Are other cities doing this, and do we have an example of where it's been a success?
Sure.
That would just be my question.
There's a lot of other cities that are offering incentives to develop hotels, conference centers, things like that. Hotel motel taxes do fund other things. What I've seen in other communities, say Broken Arrow-ish, is that the general hotel motel tax has funded a hotel project. That really makes the other hoteliers mad. What we're proposing, the difference here is tax me, I'll tax myself to be able to fund a project. So I think that's fair for all the other hoteliers. That's how we're looking at this. But there are other communities, and I'd be glad to share that with the council.
All right, any other questions? Good discussion.
I did, one of the counselors did ask for some job numbers, and I have those, if I could share those with you guys. Other than that, I don't have any other discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Any other questions? From council?
So I think the intent is to bring these back to regular meeting, is that right? Or?
Yes, and so the intent will be to bring it back. I don't know when. If it'll be the regular meeting or the next special meeting or April, but at some point, if we choose, it'll come back before the council, and the council can then choose to put it to a vote of the people or not.
This is great, thank you for sharing.
What's that? The counselors have it. I can give you a proposal right there. Okay, great, thanks.
All right, so moving on to item number 8, discussion and possible action on the lease transfer agreement on hangar site lease number 39 between Thomas Lacombe, okay, and and William Siege, S-I-E-G, as approved by action of the Tahlequah Municipal Airport Board during the January board meeting. Mr. Blish could not be with us tonight, but we have on page 19, we have the agreement. It's a standard agreement for lease for hangar site number 39. Does anybody have any questions?
I'll happily make the motion that we approve the lease modification as presented.
We have a motion by Councilor Long. Do we have a second? Second by Councilor Bliss. Any other discussion?
I got one question.
Yes, sir.
Is he going to take over the remaining time of this lease, or is it just open-ended?
That I don't know. Mr. Bliss is not here, do you know? I would assume that it would start, I mean, by looking at this lease, it looks like it would start when it's executed, so.
Well, it says transfer of assignment, so wouldn't that be assigning the current lease as it?
Correct, and I reviewed the current lease, so I can't answer how it will sunset, but he's taking on the lease attorney's place.
Well, we've had some past problems with the leases going on indefinitely, and I kind of want it read in that it's for a defined amount of time, just like the prior lease.
Rescind my second.
Okay.
In the hopes of,
In the what?
in the hopes of making a motion.
Okay. So do you rescind your motion?
I'm so confused right now.
Well, your motion doesn't have a second, so.
Okay, I'll rescind my motion for lack of a second.
All right, so we're back to.
I'll motion
Waiting for a motion.
to approve pending legal review. Is that acceptable?
Well, I think you're trying to take care of his comment once, but in no effect could the signed lease continue for more than 25 years from today's date, because that's actually part of our charter, or at least part of our code. We're not supposed to lease property in excess of 25 years.
Okay, I will amend my motion to include the city attorney's recommendation.
All right, so there's a motion.
Pending legal review and more than 25 years.
From today's date.
And a second by Councilor Long. Any discussion? Clerk, are you good with the motion?
I believe so.
All right, clerk, call the roll.
Counselor Bliss? Counselor Long?
Yes.
Counselor Combs?
Yes.
Counselor Hires?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Number 9 is discussion of possible action to approve budget amendment, which will move $11,292 from account 210-50-83-88 to account 110-66-93-16 to help fund palletized striping machine for the street department. Commissioner Ryan.
Okay, thank you. I hope that the material I put in your packets kind of explain what we're doing. This item we're on is basically to get the money together in order to buy the striping machine. The striping machine, a year ago, when we got a quote on it, was $42,000. When we finally got around to getting it, it had gone up several $1,000s. This $11,292 from account 210-50-83-88, that is money that we saved on sand spreading bed. It was in the budget. This money was put in the budget to buy the sand bed, but we bought a truck with a snow plow on the front and a sand bed in it with everything hooked up. Everything was on state contract, and therefore we saved a lot of money. So we had this much money, more than this much money left in this one account, which was to buy the sand bed. So basically, to move that money, it's going to take a budget amendment. So, are there any questions, or did I thoroughly make sure?
So we have a budget amendment to move from one account to the other. Any questions?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve.
All right, Councilor Long made a motion to approve the budget amendment. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Bliss made the second. Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Counselor Long?
Yes.
Counselor Combs?
Yes.
Counselor Bliss?
Yes.
Counselor Hires?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right, number 10 is discussion and possible action for the purchase of an easy liner palletized striper. Commissioner Riles. You're up again.
And it is, we put it out on seal bid, we left it out for the specified number of days, contacted several different companies that have these, it was advertised, we only got one bid back, but it is the one that I wanted, it's called the Easy Liner. It's going to take them about 6 to 8 weeks to build it, and once they get the order, it's going to cost us, with the optional equipment that I asked them to add to it, it's going to cost $56,488. Now, I would like to add, just so you'll know, this item before, where you moved $11,292 to help fund this striping machine, there's also another $2,096 that we're moving from the snowplow account. That's money that we saved when we bought the snowplow. In order to move that money, all I need to do is get Mr. Cart to sign it, and that money can be transferred. I just wanted you to be aware of all the money that's going into this. So, anyway, I would like to ask that you vote to let us purchase this Easy Liner palletized striper. We have a truck with a good strong steel bed that it will sit on. We've rebuilt it just for a palletized paint striper. A palletized paint striper means that it's all built on one frame, one pallet. Once we get through with it on this 1-ton truck, we can take a forklift and run up under it and lift it up and take it over under the shed and set it down on a stand. But that's why it's palletized. Anyway, that's probably more than you want to know, but please let me buy this.
So you have to do everything that we need to know?
Yes, sir.
We still have plans for our other paint striper?
Excuse me?
Do we still have plans for our other paint striper?
Our little one? Yes, sir. To use
Okay, so do they use the same paints?
Parking lot, yes, sir.
Okay.
Same paint, same glass beads, everything. It'll be best used to paint stripes in parking lots. And it's old, but it still works pretty good. And the other good thing about this palletized paint striper, I won't have guys out walking in the street with vests on and people trying to run over them.
So what's the plan to paint streets here going forward once we receive the equipment?
Now, once we receive the equipment, we will determine what streets are priority. Start with those, start painting them. A lot of streets are very dangerous. Now, I will tell you this, I'm asking a company in Muskogee to get me a bid to go ahead and get East Downing painted. Man, it's terrible. I get lots of phone calls, lots of emails, and they say they can't see the lines. Well, I can't see them either, and I would really like it striped.
Before we head down the rabbit hole, I'm going to have to bring us back to...
I was asking if we were going to use the equipment.
There you go.
That's clear.
I'm sorry.
You're all right. You're all right.
Councilor
Is there any other questions?
Councilor Blitz did that.
Everything's my fault.
Can I just clarify, Wayne? It says on your statement, the item was put out for bids and Easy Liner was the only bid received. So this is not a state contract price,
No,
but
ma'am.
this was the only responsive bidder to your request?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, gotcha. But based on your personal experience, this is reasonable quote?
Yes.
So they're not taking advantage of that?
I think Easy Liner has been in this business. They were one of the first ones to start building this type of road striping machine. And they're going to come down, if we purchase it upon delivery, they'll come down and train us to how to use it. The county has one that's very similar to it. I think it's an Easy Liner. It's just an older model. But this one has a lot of gadgets on it to help keep the line straight. There'll be one person driving the truck. It's going to be guided with a laser. There'll be another person on a seat in the back where the tank nozzles are with a control panel, and they'll be able to talk to one another and just go down the street painting stripes.
That sounds like fun.
Yes. Especially
Are there any-
real good and hot.
Any other questions? Make sure that gets put in the minutes. Councilor Long volunteered to do the striping of the lane. Any other questions? All right, any questions from the audience? Okay, before we have a motion, we have to, well, it needs to be included in the motion that the budget item, the account number is 10668316. But the budget from the account number from our agenda item on agenda 9, we just moved all the money into account 10669316. So we need an amendment, or we need a motion. If you all choose, we need a motion to approve this out of account 10668316, and then to clarify item number 9, that there was a typo and it should read account 110668316.
If that's right, we didn't, yeah, as long as you didn't.
Right, so that's right.
Okay.
So what is right? Not
It should be 83 instead of 93.
in 9?
Right.
Okay. And then in 10, we're moving to 9316?
No, we're moving to 83.
Okay.
It's just wrong, it was just wrong, the agenda. Right.
You
So when
just
I read
need to
it
change
in,
the
when I
9
read
to
it
an
in,
8.
I read it in wrong. So that's the motion. Is everybody all clear?
That's the correct way to do that, Marie?
All minds clear? Now I know why I didn't marry her. Just wasn't here.
You can, I don't know, I don't have a memory of what was actually motion on number 9, if it was read in as the number or not. We can clarify a typo, but well, I think that this is probably the cleanest way to go ahead and get everybody's consent that we are putting it in 83, not 93, just to clarify.
Okay, well, I'll make the motion that Stephen just said.
Okay. So there's a motion by Councilor Long. Is there a second? Is there a second? There's a second. There's a second by Councilor Combs. Is there any other discussion? All right, clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Combs?
Yes.
Counselor Bliss?
Abstain.
Counselor Long?
Yes.
Counselor Hires?
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And Councilor Hires, thank you for catching that typo. I didn't see it.
No problem. All right, so now we'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. Motion made by Councilor Combs, second by Councilor Long. Any discussion? Clerk call the roll.
Counselor Bliss?
Yes.
Counselor Long?
Yes.
Counselor Combs? Yes. Counselor Hires?
Yes. Being at 7:52. Item number 12, discussing possible action to approve the 2018-19 contract with the IAFF Local 4900.
Yeah, I know which one now.
Do we have a motion?
Sorry, we
So
were,
moved.
A motion to approve the 2018-19 contract. Is there a second? Second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Bliss?
Yes.
Counselor Long?
yes.
Counselor Combs?
Yes.
Counselor Hires?
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right. Item number 13 is adjourned. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Happy motion talking.
A motion by Councilor Long, seconded by Councilor Combs. Clerk call the roll.
Counselor Long?
Yes.
Counselor Combs?
Yes.
Counselor Bliss?
No.
Counselor Hires?
Yes.
Motion carries.